I need to charge now.
Oh, do you want to swap, Tony?
Are you charged?
Oh, you went to the pub yesterday.
Tēnā koutou katoa, haere mai ki tēnei hui, ki te mana whenua, rangitānei, he mihi nui, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Right, I will reopen the planning and strategy meeting and we'll move through the agenda. So we have gone through apologies already. Just look, I've had no notification of additional items. Are there any declarations of interest?
Madam Chair, I'll just mention that in the minutes that Homes for People presented, but I don't see any conflict in supporting that item as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Just looking to public comment, I don't believe we have any. No. So moving on to the minutes. So I will move that the minutes be confirmed as a true and correct record, seconded by Councillor Hancock. Is there any comment? Great, I will invite you to vote. That has carried 100%. Moving on to our first report, item number 6, the review of the stormwater drainage bylaw. And we have got Julie McDonald. No, we don't.
No, we do.
Oh, we do. We have the team. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou. We don't have anything to add to this report. Happy for it to be taken as read, but just to remind councillors that this is just the initiation of the bylaw review process, not the review itself. But happy to answer any questions.
Councillors, are there any questions? Great, thank you. I will move the recommendations on the screen, seconded by Councillor Hancock. Is there any comment? Great, I will invite you to vote. And that has carried 100%. Moving on to our next item, item number 7, BPO quarterly report on page 33.
The report you have in front of you is the BPO quarterly update. It's the last update of financial year 1920. We're going to take the report as read. I am conscious of the fact that all the elected members have recently gone through a very comprehensive workshop on this and are all intimately au fait with the current status of the project. So if it would be understandable if there weren't any questions.
Thank you for that introduction. Councillors, are there any questions?
Oh, good.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I suppose reflecting on that workshop not happening in public is probably worth traversing some of that ground again, just briefly. So just would hope to hear an update around what the community can expect in terms of the interest in more comprehensive information around both the state of the river and the options and the likely impacts of those options?
Lucky I made it here. Yes, so we're in a state at the moment of refining the options to a point where we can evaluate them accurately with technical experts. And as part of the forward process through to making a decision for the preferred option, which we've proposed in this report to extend it out to early next year as opposed to December, which was originally put out into the public, we will be holding far more intensive stakeholder engagement and bringing them along the journey with the MCA process. And from a public side of things, we will be putting far more in-depth information out for people to access, again, to take people along the journey. And we will also be embarking on a further consultation process in early next year. The dates are not yet locked in, but we're just putting that out there. The council listened to what the public had to say in the first round, and as a consequence of COVID, the extensive amount of work that's underway, the engagement that's essential with neighbouring iwi, we are proposing to have a community phase early next year and push the decision out to roughly February, March 2021.
Thank you. And final questions in the same vein in terms of feedback that we got during the initial round of consultation. There's quite a bit of community interest around what we're doing in going up to pipe, quote unquote, in terms of looking at managing demand, et cetera. Can you give us some insight into how much investigation is planned on the sort of demand management side?
Yes, sustainability and demand management has been a critical part of the project so far. As we move into the detailed work to define the shortlist options, we are looking in detail what the level of effect is of implementing wastewater reduction in homes, but in trade waste as well. We're also looking as part of the treatment information that we're working up at the moment, what we can do at the treatment plant to also look at reuse and what we can put back.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, and thanks for the report. Is it on?
No,
The light's on. Can you hear me?
nobody's home.
I'll bring it forward. The top of page 34 talks about the increased budget for 1920 year, and then the next clause down it talks about the unexpended budget was not carried forward. I'm just wondering how much of that budget wasn't spent.
When I checked with finance yesterday, it was 450 grand.
Pardon?
450,000.
Wasn't spent.
Yeah.
So, and then it talks about the budget for the current year being 1.2 million, and it hasn't got anything further there. So I'm assuming that's adequate.
Yeah.
Is it? So the fact that that budget wasn't spent, was it just not? And I know that some of the activities were deferred, but I'm just trying to understand why it wasn't spent, because there was quite a strong justification for in the paper that came asking for that. Just trying to get some context around that.
So it's to do with the delays associated with COVID, which has pushed the consultation engagement process out, and that cost associated with that has dropped into the next financial year. We don't carry it forward because it's an OPEX cost. Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just asking about the 1,500 or so online and written submissions that were received. At some point, will they be presented either in a summary form or, some conclusions drawn from those? Because I don't think we've had access to look at them just yet.
No, you won't have access to it yet. We are in the process of drafting up a summary report, which then forms part of the overall evaluation process Council will go through to make a decision, which runs alongside the MCA. We are also looking at putting out information to the public on what the outputs were from that consultation process too, as part of that informing where we're heading over the next few months.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tom. It's just reconfirming. I just want to reconfirm page 34, 2.2.3. Is it true that the shortlist was presented about 10 years ago?
No, that's actually 2019. I picked up that one. I read it before. It should be 2019, not 2010.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to get an understanding, understand the progression of the technical assessment, but where will we start getting the dollar figures associated with each option? When would that be expected, and the wider community become more aware of what we're looking at as far as that commitment?
Twofold question there, but we envisage having the shortlist refined in a couple of weeks' time, and it definitely has to be done by the end of September to allow time for all of the technical experts to then undertake their detailed assessment to inform the MCA. It's always an ongoing process to refine the detail. The more we investigate and spend time on this, the more refined we can get on the cost side of things, as well as the level of effects. We would expect that the new consultation process we're putting out in early next year would have far more revised dollar figures. We will have revised figures for the purposes of the MCA as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just a further question, sorry, that I forgot to ask. It's purely administrative, but page 41 refers to the briefings and workshops that are scheduled, and it talks about a tentative one for the 6th of October. And I'm just wondering if that's an error, because everyone, councillors do have that diary for the 9th of October. I see that it may be shifted, but I'd just like to ask if there's any clearer information in terms of the tentative dates for both of those workshops.
Yes, so the 9th is the correct date, and we are not proposing to move that as a briefing to councillors. It's focused on the MCA. We'll also be briefing stakeholders. We took on board the suggestion of a doodle poll, which Councillor Barrett suggested. We are just in the final hurdles of looking at when the actual workshop dates and briefings will occur, which PSG members and councillors are invited to attend. We will be coming out with those in the next, certainly by the end of this week.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any further questions? Thank you, Melina and Tom. Right, I will move that we receive the update on the screen. Thank you, Councillor Hancock, seconding that, and I'll open up for any comment. Councillor Barrett.
Just brief, I think, really appreciate what officers have done here in terms of what ended up being quite a comprehensive initial round of engagement, and people that were involved directly in that have an appreciation for just how broad that was in terms of the range of the community that we were able to engage with directly, and I think we can be very heartened by those high numbers of submissions. But particularly wanted to note and acknowledge that the project team is taking on board what's been heard from the community in terms of a desire for more comprehensive information in terms of the sustainability measures, et cetera. So I wanted to acknowledge and thank the project team on their progress to date.
Thank you. With no further comments, I'll invite you to vote. Great, that has carried 100%. Moving on to the committee work schedule, and I will invite the GM to make any comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got no further comment to make.
Right. Are there any questions on the work schedule? Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Cheryl. Just a question on item 9, which is the Civic and Cultural Precinct Master Plan. The subject detailed there is timeline and costings, but following the briefing that we just had, I wonder if that detail needs to shift slightly to accurately represent what that report will be.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think that this does need to be updated to reflect that we'll be seeking expressions of interest to progress that work.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Great. Well, I will move that the committee work schedule be received. Seconded by Councillor Hancock. Thank you. And I'll invite you to vote. And that has carried 100%. Nō reira, na mihi nui kia koutou, ina mana, ina reo, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And that concludes our meeting. I'll look to the Deputy Mayor for a bit of guidance on next steps.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We've made swift progress this morning. So what we will do is we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we've got one workshop around community leasing. We'll have that, and I understand